at once. There we go.
Coming up and getting more food. Hopefully they're going to keep coming, and hopefully it was okay. Was the quality really good? I think they did a great job. So for our first speaker, I wanted to bring up our executive director, Michael Lapine. Come on up.
Woo-hoo. Well, it is great to see everyone, and glad that all of you could be here. It's fantastic to see everybody coming in from all over the world to be a part of this great event. And one of the things that I love about this type of an event is I think it's easy with us being a digital ministry and us having our own part that we play all over the world. It's easy for us to feel isolated at times. It's easy for us to feel like, well, I'm working really hard here, but what is everyone else doing? And so I love events like this because it's a physical reminder of the incredible team that we have that's operating all around the world to see people come to know Christ. And to be able to help provide an articulate, intelligent defense of the Christian faith in the public arena. And so I'm so glad that you are here tonight to be able to be a part of that. All of you that are joining, for all of you that don't know, we have chapter directors joining us online from all over the world as well that are watching through our Zoom call. So we want to welcome all of you as well. But we hope that tonight you are encouraged as you are reminded that you are a part of an incredible team that is operating and moving forward as one large machine that is just continuing to take ground for the gospel. And so I hope that you're encouraged by the gathering of everyone here tonight and that you have the opportunity to meet others that perhaps are at a different table than you are. Introduce yourself to them. Let them know what role you play at Reasonable Faith so that you understand that you are indeed a part of an incredible team. Speaking of our team, I would like to introduce, we have several team members that work with Reasonable Faith here tonight. So first and foremost, Davis Cable is one of our board members. So Davis, you can just raise your hand. So we're glad that Davis could be here tonight. Also, of course, you all know Tyson James, our global chapter director. He'll be coming back up here in just a moment. And his wife, Maria, is also here tonight. So we're glad that she could be here. And Tyson is particularly happy about that. And also Gabe Jones, who is our media coordinator. Gabe and his wife Ashley. Gabe does all of our video editing, graphic design, all of the incredible things that you see happening on YouTube and all these different places. Gabe is the guy that does all that incredible work and works very closely with Dr. Craig and some special projects every now and then as well. So we appreciate the role that every single one of our team members play. And so I hope you have a chance to meet them tonight before you leave. That way you're aware of who they are. And one last thing that I'd like to make sure you're aware of is before you leave tonight, we have some Kalam Cosmological t-shirts. We actually made them available in our spring campaign, and we wanted to make them available to you as well. So if you are here tonight, no matter what role you may play in the ministry, we hope that you'll feel free to grab a t-shirt over here. And if we do run out of sizes, which we anticipate that we will, there's a QR code that is right here printed out on the table that you can be able to fill that out. Let us know what your address is should we not have it. And also we'll ship one out to you on whatever size you'd like. We also have some black tumblers that we ordered. They unfortunately were not in for tonight, but that is also how you will order your tumbler. So if you would like one, even if you grab a t-shirt, fill out that QR code with your phone, and let us know. It's a fantastic black matte tumbler that has the Kalam cosmological argument on it as well to go along with your t-shirt, so be sure to do that. So yeah, it's fantastic. So we're glad that you're here. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll turn it back over to Tyson.
All right, now we want to invite Dr. Craig up to giving his update. We're going to open it up for a little bit of Q&A. So be thinking about maybe some questions that you have for him.
Okay, and I take it then that because of the filming, I'm supposed to stand
You can.
here.
You're the boss. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tyson. Thank you, Michael.
Here, let me move it for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have any notes, so
Oh, you want me to move it?
yeah. No, we'll just get rid of it. Well, I want to add my greetings as well to everyone. I just so look forward to this time together every year wherein our chapter directors from around the world gather together and we swap stories about what God is doing. It really is marvelous the way He is using you. And our goal is to empower you, to give you our branding, our materials, so that you can develop your own ministry in your area or in your country. And so just thank you for all that you're doing. We have some special guests here tonight that I want to introduce so that you can acknowledge them. First and foremost is my wife and partner for all these years in ministry, Jan Craig. And then we have some members of the panel that are going to be holding forth tomorrow morning on the historical Adam book. Michael Murray is here tonight. Michael is with the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation and is a longtime colleague and friend. It was Michael who organized the debate at Franklin and Marshall College with Paul Kurtz, the humanist philosopher, on Is Goodness Without God Good Enough, which eventually became a book as well. And Michael helped to inspire me in my quest of the historical Adam. So I owe a great deal to my friend and colleague, Michael Murray, right here. Raise your hand, Michael. And then also on the panel is John Collins, who's here with his wife, Diane. John is a professor of Old Testament studies at Concordia in St. Louis. Is that right? Covenant in St. Louis. And has been a great help to me as well in my work on the historical Adam. We both attended the Creation Project conferences that were held at Trinity and spent time together discussing these issues and then also corresponding. And so I owe a real debt to John for his work, and he'll be on the panel tomorrow as well. Now, Hans Madueme was supposed to be here tonight, but I don't think he is. He was on the panel as well, but he doesn't appear to be with us. One other person that was involved in the historical Adam work is Gavin Ortland over here. Gavin. He is a pastor and author, and also was in attendance at the Creation Project conference. And we had some very good heart-to-heart talks in which I shared with Gavin, honestly, the struggle that I was going through over this historical Adam business and how to sort it out. And it was really good to have a brother like that whom I could talk with, honestly. But Gavin is special to me as well because he is the son of my college pal, Bud Ortland, who went to Wheaton with me. And it's so funny to me to be collaborating now with my old college chum's son in this sort of work. So thank you, Gavin. It's great working with you. And then let's see, we have Ryan Mullins here tonight as well. There he is over here. And Ryan has been advising me and also reading and giving comments on my systematic philosophical theology as I work on that. And so I'm very grateful to Ryan for the interaction that we've had on some of these subjects. And so it's really a delight, Ryan, to have you here with us tonight. He's in Helsinki, working as a Christian philosopher there, and soon to move to Pennsylvania, right? So good to have you here. I think that's all of the dignitaries that I wanted to introduce. In terms of my activities, if you read our newsletter, you'll know what I've been up to. During the pandemic, I haven't been traveling. And so every day from morning till evening, I'm writing this systematic philosophical theology, really the first work of its kind. And volume 1 is nearly done. I'm just stunned at the progress. Volume 1 will comprise Prolegomena, in which I discuss what a systematic philosophical theology is and how it differs or resembles systematic theology and philosophy of religion. And then I discuss De Scriptura Sacra, or Holy Scripture, which is the doctrine of Scripture. And there I attempt to differentiate between revelation and then the different forms that revelation can take, including Holy Scripture, provide a theory of inspiration of Scripture based upon a middle knowledge perspective on that subject, and then give a defense of why we believe that Scripture is inspired by God and what sort of authority then Scripture holds for us. And that lays then the foundation for the remainder of the systematic theology rooted ultimately in the authority of Scripture. The next chapter then is De Fide, on faith, in which I address two questions. One would be, what is the nature of faith? And if you're around here Thursday afternoon, I'll be giving a talk here at the EPS that comes out of that chapter. Does faith imply belief? And believe it or not, I mean, this was, again, just one of the amazing things to me that I discovered. There are quite a number of Christian philosophers today who think that faith does not imply belief. That you can have faith that God exists, you can have faith that Jesus rose from the dead, but not really believe that God exists or that Jesus rose from the dead. So that's the subject of Thursday's talk. And then the second question would be, what is the justification for faith? How would you, what would contribute to making it epistemically justified to have faith? And then the next chapter is the really big one, the doctrine of God. And this is where the heart of volume 1 is, as I go through the attributes of God. And so I discuss divine necessity, divine aseity, divine simplicity, divine omniscience, divine omnipotence, divine omnipresence, and divine goodness. And I'm currently wrapping up the section on divine goodness. And if I can just share a personal perspective on this project, I have been surprised over and over again at how much I'm learning doing this. This is not just a matter of summarizing what I've been studying all these years. I'm breaking new ground. I'm learning new things all the time. I think that one of the dangers of specialization is that you get so narrowly focused in one area, the rest of the discipline sort of passes you by. And so I'd never really worked, for example, on the nature of faith. I'd never heard that there were philosophers who thought that faith doesn't imply belief. And on the subject of divine goodness, I've been so surprised. I wanted to talk about God's moral perfection, about how God is the supreme good, and develop a kind of divine command theory of ethics like Robert Adams, where God and his nature is the good, and then the commandments he issues constitute our moral obligations. But what I discovered is that scripturally speaking, the word goodness or good doesn't denote God's moral perfection in Scripture. And that was totally new to me. I'd never heard this. The Hebrew word for goodness, when used of God, typically denotes God's beneficence, his generosity, the way he blesses his people. So the Psalms are filled with praise to God for his goodness to Israel, and by that they mean his beneficence, not his moral perfection. So what is the word then in Scripture that denotes God's moral perfection? Well, I think it's righteousness. Righteousness is God's moral perfection. And as I discovered in my work on the divine on the atonement, God's righteousness encompasses not merely his saving love and acts, but it also encompasses his retributive justice. And that is hugely important because it means that God's moral perfection comprises both love and justice. And this runs contrary to the view of certain Christian philosophers today, one of whom I heard this morning, who say that God's entire moral perfection is reducible to his love. All of God's moral perfections and virtues are all reducible to God's love. And I think that neglects divine justice, particularly God's retributive justice, which is so critical to the doctrine of penal substitution and an adequate theory of the atonement. So that's just an illustration of how, in doing this, I feel like I'm getting a new education. Honestly, this has been so exciting for me to learn all of these new insights and so forth, and I share them with Jan on our walks in the morning. I say, will you hear what I've been reading about? And we talk about it and so forth. And so this volume, when it comes out, is not going to just be a rehash. It will have familiar material in it, but it's going to have a lot of new stuff too that is very exciting. So I'm continuing to work on that. And just pressing forward every day, using what we call the turtle method. You remember the story of the tortoise and the hare? The way the turtle won the race was just steady plodding, one foot in front of the other, and eventually the tortoise wins the race. And that's what I'm doing with this systematic philosophical theology. And that's consumed me. Michael Lapine, thank God for him, is sort of running reasonable faith and holding reign over everything else, while I've just been completely consumed with the systematic theology. But it's been a real joy and education. Well, as Tyson said, if we have time, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have about what we're doing in reasonable faith or anything else that I might share out of my work. Yes?
How's the education center? How's that going along?
Very slowly. What he's referring to is this academic center that we're trying to found. For years, people were telling me, why don't you develop a curriculum based on your material? And I've always resisted it because I didn't want reasonable faith to be competing with our established Christian educational institutions. As someone involved in Christian education all my professional life, I want students to get accredited degrees from our best universities and seminaries. But then what somebody proposed to us is, why not affiliate with one of these established seminaries or universities so that they will give credit to your reasonable faith courses at that seminary or university. And that's what we're presently negotiating with a couple of these institutions. All of this is highly confidential. I can say this, that
live.
What?
It's going out live.
Right. Yeah, so I'm not going to share it. I'm telling why. But what I can say is that we have climbed the first rung, so to speak, and now we need to move to the second rung with higher level administrators and decision makers at these institutions. And it's sort of basically convincing them that this is in their own best self-interests, that by doing this, they will have a massive influx of online students and full-time enrollment, and so big bucks will roll into the university or seminary. It's in their self-interest to do this. And we have got, oh man, a faculty that no seminary or Christian university could boast of for these courses we're going to offer. For example, Ryan Mullins is teaching one of the classes on divine simplicity, or he's developing the course rather than saying he's teaching it. He's going to develop that online class and many other courses of this sort. So we just are praying and resting. Jan and I are resting very contentedly in the Lord's will for this. We're not anxious, we're not impatient, we're just waiting to see how things develop. And so that's about all I can share. The negotiations are ongoing. Thank you.
The rest of us are anxious.
Yeah.
I do have a question. I have a mic.
If I may. Also, if you go to the Reasonable Faith website, right there on the very first banner that is on the homepage, if you click that, it will take you to our landing page where there's a link where you can download what's called the treatment of the center, where you can see all of the specialists that will be teaching all of the classes, the courses that are laid out. You can be able to print that, download it if you want to. It's a fantastic brochure that you can find out all kinds of great information about the center as well.
Yeah. And I should have mentioned, I think Kirk McGregor is teaching or developing one of the courses on Molinism for the curriculum as well. So we're pulling in really good folks. Anybody else? Yes.
Can I bring you the mic real quick so that you're online?
Thanks. Well, it's a question of mine and a question from the Latin American chapter directors that couldn't come. Are you going to develop an argument, or are you going to deal with the doctrine of inerrancy in the systematic theology?
Yes. Yes, in the chapter De Scriptura Sacra, it's going to develop a doctrine of inspiration based upon middle knowledge, and then the implications of this for biblical authority and how that plays out with inerrancy. And I'm affirming inerrancy. I think it's a strong, robust term that we shouldn't give up. But it will be a nuanced doctrine of inerrancy. So yes, this will be addressed in that locus.
Are you going to touch upon, and this is my question, are you going to touch upon the difference on sola scriptura and prima scriptura, I believe it's called?
Not really. I simply developed the case that only Scripture is inspired by God, and therefore, against thinkers like Richard Swinburne, we should not accord church tradition any sort of comparable authority. It all ultimately goes back to Scripture. So it's a very Protestant systematic theological approach, rooted in the authority of Scripture, or sola scriptura, as you say. Okay, here's a question.
Ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Craig. I was just wondering, is it on?
It doesn't sound like it's
amplify, it just doesn't
amplifying.
like computers.
Oh, okay. So on your work on the historical Adam, I did hear a couple of podcasts about some response from pastors and such on that, but I'm just
I
wondering.
am not hearing you well enough. Can you project
Speak up. This
more
only
or speak up
does it to the
louder?
computer so the audience can hear. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'm just, was wondering for a little bit more information, besides what's been done on the Reasonable Faith podcast, about the response from the philosophical and Christian communities on your work on the historical Adam.
Oh, this work is so new. She asked about the Inquest of the Historical Adam. It just came out in September. That there has been so far very little professional reaction to it. I think that the panel discussion tomorrow is going to be really the first sort of substantive interaction. Now, Jan did tell me this morning that I got an email from my teaching assistant, Tim Bayless, about several responses or reviews that have been written, but I haven't had a chance to look at them. But so far, it's mainly been foaming at the mouth by people who haven't read the book. On either the right or the left. I mean, on the right, Richard Land of the Southern Baptist Convention says that William Lane Craig denies the existence of the historical atom. Now, where does he get that? On the other hand, Jerry Coyne, the virulent atheist biologist, says Craig doesn't believe in a historical Adam and Eve. He just believes in a historical Adam, but no Eve. And he then attacks the straw man by saying, well, that's absurd. Of course there has to be a human mate for Adam to be the progenitor of the human race. And I think, where do these people get these ideas? They've never read the book, I think. And Gavin has a terrific response to one of these persons, very ironic, very much appreciated on his YouTube channel. So I'm anxious to hear more, especially from Old Testament scholars.
Some of the books here?
What?
Did you bring some of the books here?
Are any books here?
Oh, I don't think they are. Erdman's normally would have a display, but I saw in an email message from them that they are simply exhibiting display copies, but not selling books. So they'll be selling at the AARSBL, but not at the ETS. Kind of strange this year. So sorry.
Hi, Dr. Craig. You mentioned about specialization, and I've actually noticed when I was in seminary how a lot of specialties, people didn't often know what their counterparts in other specialties knew. So for instance, Old Testament scholars versus theologians versus New Testament scholars versus philosophers, right? And they don't always talk well with each other, and then crossing the bridge to pastors and laypersons. I was just wondering if you've noticed in the responses to the historical Adam and Eve, different responses to it based on people's backgrounds and specialties.
Well, as I say, there just haven't been that many professional responses yet. I think it's premature. But you're certainly right in saying that this is an interdisciplinary study that involves Old Testament studies, Assyriological studies of the ancient Mesopotamian religions and culture. It involves even work in the history of philosophy of science. Some of the things I discovered about Babylonian science were absolutely fascinating, and how this impacts the frequent claim you hear that ancient peoples believed that the earth was surmounted by a hard dome resting on the earth at its horizon with stars engraved on it. And anybody who knows anything about Babylonian astronomy knows that's nuts, that's baloney. The Babylonians didn't have a physical cosmology. They were instrumentalists when it comes to their physical science. So they didn't have a physical cosmology of that sort. So that gets drawn into the equation. And then you've got New Testament studies, of course, for that material on Adam. And then you've got the material on myth, folklore studies, which was very intriguing for me. And then all of the different paleoanthropological disciplines that come to bear on human origins, like paleontology and paleoneurology and paleogenetics and paleoproteomics, the analysis of tooth enamel in ancient hominids. It is just unbelievable how fascinating and interconnected all of these disciplines are. So this book is a treasure trove of fascinating information that I've never seen brought together under two covers anywhere before. And so, yeah, I'm going to be very interested to hear the reaction of specialists, because I often will take them on and challenge some of their assumptions. And here I do think good philosophical training makes a real contribution. I do think that philosophical analysis, the ability to clearly define terms and distinguish concepts and develop an argument logically is of great benefit in dealing with some of these issues. A prime example would be Richard Middleton's work on the image of God, the Imago Dei. I think that the argument I give against his functionalist interpretation is really powerful based on his own evidence that he draws from ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian sources. So I think that philosophy is involved in this. It's not irrelevant. It gives you the conceptual tools to do good work. I know that isn't what you asked, but you get me going on this stuff. Yes, right here in the front.
Getting back to the educational part, you are talking with some of the institutions in the United States, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Any plans for Europe or South America or the rest of the world?
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Although our primary affiliation will be with some American seminary or university, we definitely want to see affiliate centers in Latin America offering a Spanish curriculum or Portuguese, as well as in Asia or in Africa. So our vision is a large one. It's worldwide. And so once we get the American one established, plans will go into gear to spread it abroad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Dr. Craig, thank you so much for your life, your ministry, your work. There was a version of the verse "Mark the perfect man" from the King James version of the Bible, and I think by your example and your life, you're working through education and even how you've modeled how to do Christian work, apologetic work within a church. That's been a pattern for me as well. That's something it showed me the importance of getting associated with the local body and becoming known as a faithful Christian brother, and then using that as an avenue to do my apologetics ministry. So it's a long journey, but I'm on that path now. But as far as your magnum opus, your work on the conceptual background for the logos in John, when you deal with abstract objects, you pose in your book God of All, you pose that backdrop, that conceptual background is either due to the Jewish wisdom literature, or it's due to the wisdom the books. The wisdom books within the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm interested because when I began to look into that, it seems to me that some of the Hellenistic Greek thinkers, Eudorus of Alexandria and several that you mentioned, they had a view of the Logos, but their view of the Logos was pantheistic. And Philo had a view of the Logos, but they're in some of Philo's writings, he says explicitly that the Logos was the name of an archangel, the image of the invisible God, the firstborn, and that in the way Philo viewed the Logos seems to be more closely related to what Paul said, I believe, in Colossians. And so when I see John using this language, I'm asking myself, is John doing what the Greek thinkers was doing? Or is this a pattern, a clue to a Jewish understanding of who the Logos was? And there are several Jewish scholars who have come to this conclusion. Alan Siegel, he wrote a book, Two Powers in Heaven. Daniel Boyarin is also a rabbinic Jewish scholar who has written on many books. And they see that the Logos, this idea that there was a person who was distinct from the Father, but who was yet divine, is a Jewish idea. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, had you looked into that? Would that be something you take a look at?
This is in the book on God and Abstract Objects, or God Overall. And I was stunned to discover the roots of John's prologue in Middle Platonism and its Logos doctrine. And you're right, the Stoics had a Logos doctrine that was pantheistic. But for Philo, the Logos was more or less the mind of God. And he thought that the world existed conceptually in the mind of God prior to being created. His comparison was the way a city plan exists in the mind of the city planner or architect before it's executed in stones and timber and so forth. And the close connections between Philo's Logos doctrine and John's are just stunning, just over and over again. You would almost think that John knew Philo's work, but we don't need to go to that extreme. We can simply say that John reflects this same cultural stream of Middle Platonism that comes to expression in Philo and other Middle Platonists in the first century. So I quite agree with you about the relevance of Hellenized Judaism to John's Logos doctrine and also to Paul's. The interesting thing is that Paul will substitute Christ, Christos, instead of the Logos, but it looks like he's using the same sort of tradition, except substituting Christos for Logos in these sayings. Look at the literature that I cite in the book. Look at the footnotes. There's one essay, if you can read German, there's an essay by this woman, Jutta Leonhard Balzer. Great German name, is Leonhard Balzer. And it is just a fantastic study of the parallels between Philo's Logos doctrine and John's.
Oh, thank you. And I just say this one more thing. But
Let me just say as well, with respect to the first part of your question, I appreciated what you said. I am a churchman, and I am in Sunday school every Sunday, almost every Sunday, teaching adult Sunday school class. And so we believe in the local church and the importance of being involved in it. And that's where my Defenders class comes out of.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if someone else has a follow-up or another question.
Thank you.
Yes. You're going to have to really shout.
I'm going to stand up for this. Okay. Thank you for your work, Dr. Craig. My question is, do you think that early career philosophers should take risks in publishing against maybe socially controversial or socially accepted ideas? So I'm talking about like transgender issues, stuff like that. Should those who haven't maybe secured a tenure, right? It's super risky, but do you think as Christian philosophers they should nevertheless take that risk and publish those controversial ideas?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. That is such an important question. I certainly wouldn't do it during my doctoral studies. I would wait until I had the degree in hand. But you're talking about an untenured young professor who could lose his job. Michael, what would you say in answer to a question like that?
I don't know if I want to be on the.
Let me make sure it's recorded, sir. Yeah.
So, I was at a secular institution for 20 years and was department chair for most of the time that I was there. And I would say, so that was started 30 years ago. I would say 30 years ago, if you were at an institution that wasn't filled with people who are ideologues, that were out to get those who hold different opinions, I think it would be okay to publish something like that. I think things are very different now. And I think you just have to bide your time and wait until after tenure to engage in controversial topics. That's just the way the modern academy is, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Craig, I think we're out of time for questions, but just go ahead and close us out.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, thank you all for that.
Okay, well, I would be remiss if I didn't come up and share a little bit about what's going on with the chapter, since this is the chapter directors annual banquet. So thank you guys, all of you chapter directors who have come from all over the world. We've got guys who made it out here. They're doing incredible stuff. I did want to mention real quick, one of our staff members who was left out, Raul Jaramillo. He's our regional chapter director for Latin America. Latin America is our fastest growing region, so he's going to be probably taking my job here in a few years. So just to give you a couple quick highlights, we have 208 chapters in 35 countries on 6 continents. We are reaching the most far-flung regions of the globe. We just did a chapter spotlight newsletter that went out to all of our subscribers about a chapter in Kathmandu, Nepal. The chapter director there had the opportunity to take the gospel to a remote nomadic tribe called the Rauta people, just a few hundred people, and he's taken pictures with his Reasonable Faith polo shirt. Just incredible, the reach of Reasonable Faith through these chapters, and so it's a real privilege to be able to serve them and help them to gain a platform to be able to share the gospel. So that's what's going on with the chapters. But before we close, I did have a few gifts for Dr. Craig on behalf of the chapter directors. So everybody knows Dr. Craig's contributions to the areas of philosophy and apologetics and theology, but very few people have, I think, recognized one area that he has been very influential, and that is in fashion. I mean, if you watch some of his earlier debates, the sweaters, the ties, I mean, just the exotic, thinking out of the box. I mean, he was really ahead of his time. So, I notice he's not wearing a tie tonight. On behalf of the chapter directors, we've got, beautiful assortment there, just up his alley. Now, there's another subject which is kind of sore to Dr. Craig, and it comes up all the time, and that is the beard. Okay, there are a lot of people that are very sad, and he's stated publicly that he's not bringing the beard back. That's okay, because we have here one for you, just in case. You know, no pressure, but it's there for you. Also, so a lot of our chapter directors could not be here tonight, and so we really wanted to do something that involved them. And so what we did was we purchased an e-card, and so all of our chapter directors received a link to this e-card, and they've signed it, and it's actually been emailed to you. It should have arrived at your email at like 5 o'clock tonight, so you'll find that a lot of great sentiments there. And then finally, they all chipped in to purchase you a physical gift. And, so this is a beautiful hourglass that we purchased. It's on behalf of all the chapter directors. The hourglass is to represent your work on the relationship between God and time. And on the top, it is inscribed, it says, presented with love and appreciation to Dr. William Lane Craig, the Reasonable Faith Chapter Directors, 2021. So there you go.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful.
All right, so that's all we have for tonight. Thank you all so much for coming. We have a little bit of time before the EPS reception starts, so feel free. We have the room until 8 o'clock, so feel free to stay, get more food, and mingle.
Let's get a photo
Yes.
of all of the chapter directors.
Yes, absolutely. We'll go ahead and set up here for that photo.